Welcome to the Manx Theatre podcast.
Come on to the theatre.
Hello, and welcome back to episode 30 of the Manx Theatre podcast with me, Neil Callin. Thank you to everyone who's listened to our previous episodes. If you're brand new to the podcast, welcome along and thanks for joining us. In this podcast, we like to try and keep you up to date with what's going on in theatre on the Isle of Man and chat to the cast and creatives of upcoming shows to find out a little bit more about the shows and the people behind them. Now, sadly, once again, since our last episode, we've learned of the death of another well-known name in Manx Theatre. Following a short illness, the Gaiety's front-of-house manager John Foster passed away suddenly on the 30th of January. John had worked at Summerland, where he met his wife Debbie, and they both transferred to work at Villa Gaiety when Summerland closed. John became a familiar face to many who attended the theatre, often taking his post on the steps in the foyer to greet customers and help anyone he could. John also took on many maintenance jobs at the theatre, and last year liaised closely with DOI to ensure the new promenade works fitted best with the Gaiety entrance and they didn't dig too far into the underground toilets. John was a workhorse, helping everyone he could and fixing things often before anyone else knew they were broken. He will deeply be missed by his colleagues and friends, as well as the friends of the Gaiety with whom he worked very closely.
Coming up on this week's podcast.
I'm joined by a legend of Manx Theatre ahead of his performance in the title role of the Manx Operatic Society's production of Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street. We'll find out a little more about the show and delve into his long and successful career in Manx Theatre. You can still listen to all of our previous episodes through all the usual podcast outlets and at manxradio.com/podcasts. Now, along with Spotify and Google and Apple Podcasts, we're now available on TuneIn, Verbal, Amazon Music and Audible. Whilst you're there, make sure to subscribe, give us a like, rate and leave a little review and share with all your friends. Make sure you keep up to date with what's going on between episodes by following Manx Theatre Podcast on both Facebook and Instagram and at Manx Theatre Pod on Twitter. Right, down to business. Joining me today on the podcast is a legend of Manx Theatre. Not only is he a talented singer and actor, having played both Jean Valjean and Jean Vert in Les Mis, but he can also dance. He's also a writer, producer, director of some of the very successful Gaiety pantomimes. He's also annoyingly modest and self-deprecating. Ladies and gentlemen, it's the housewife's favourite, David Artus. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Neil. That was an intro and a half.
Well deserved, I think. Yeah.
Oh, God.
I mean, I've known you for many years from when I first joined the Manx Operatic back in
many years.
1999.
Yes.
And there are many things I think and a lot of other people would probably like to hear from you about. But first up, the next show for you is Sweeney Todd. So tell us about the show. Tell us how it's going for you. And
Sweeney Todd is. And I don't know what questions you're going to ask, but it is the most complicated show I've ever done, and in my advancing years, it's the hardest show I've ever done. But I also think that it's got potential to be. If I'm doing an interview like this in a couple of years' time, and someone asks me what my favourite show is, it's got potential to be a favourite show as well, because it from a character actor point of view, it's an amazing role. I mean, I saw you very kindly called me a legend, but I actually my legend's a guy called Tony Hawks. I don't know if you've had Tony on yet, have you?
No.
Right.
I want to
well, that's who you need on next, because he's a true legend. And I saw Tony play this in 2004. Is it?
Yes, yeah,
2004. Yeah. And blew me away, and I followed Tony actually in a few roles now, Judas and a couple of others, and so that was it was in that era when the sort of gritty reality musicals that John Cumberledge likes to direct and produce were first being seen, right? So you had Scrooge and Jekyll and all of that kind of thing, and I love that. I gravitate towards that. So saw the show and are blown away, obviously. So when this came up, I was like, I've got to try this, even though I knew how hard it would be for me. I haven't got the best memory in the world. I do have a bit of a infamous reputation of kind of just forgetting lines and scenes and routines, and with enough kind of confidence to make people around me look like they're wrong, and I cannot get away with that in this. Not even slightly.
This is something that myself and a few of my friends have come to refer to as pulling an Artus, where you go wrong, but go wrong so spectacularly and with so much confidence that you reflect the error onto another person, and everyone else thinks that the other people have gone wrong because David Artus can't possibly go wrong.
What a proud attribute that is to have.
I was on stage with you in one show.
Rubbish.
I can't remember which one it was now, but you did it, and you looked at me, and all the audience looked at me, and I didn't even have a line in that scene, but it still made it look like I went wrong.
It is an art form. It is an art form, but I cannot afford to do that in this show, and even we're getting pulled up now. I'm privileged to work with your good self in this show, and we've got a few scenes, and you know what it's like. We are being picked up not just on the words, but on the way the words are framed. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
The inflection,
the inflection, and because if you went wrong in the music of most musicals, then you can kind of find your way back. Do you know what I mean? You wait for the next vamp bar or what have you, and all this kind of thing. But this is going to be a full orchestra, huge orchestra in the pit. They have got no room for manoeuvre. There's zero flexibility in their scores. And if you go wrong, you are in deep doo-doo. So it's
sometimes
petrifying.
goes so fast that if you miss, you're 10 bars behind before you even realise.
Yeah, and Sondheim, he ripped up the musical rule book, didn't he? At the very start, and so he changes tempo, he changes key, he changes pretty much everything all the time. But the worst thing is, as you know, having done the show twice now, is that he actually does phrases in songs in the same show which are very similar but not the same. Yes, and they have big meanings and big connotations, and you cannot get the two mixed up. Yes, there's a section that I do which is a song to Mrs. Lovett, which is very similar in Act 2 and Act 1. Yeah. And one is the end of the show when everyone's I can't give too much away, but you know what? Most people know that there's a lot of death. Yes. So there's that section, and there's a very similar section which is very light-hearted, and the words are so different. But if you get that turn of phrase in your head, it's coming out your mouth, and you just did it last night, and I was like, oh, what am I going to do if I do that on a night, so it is petrifying. But
the last time round when I played Tobias, of course, in the first half you've got Pirelli's Miracle Elixir, and then the second half you've got the opening, which is The More Hot Pies, or God That's Good, and it's the same tune, but the first half you're singing about hair, and the second half you're singing about pies, and it's so easy to get the two mixed up. And I very briefly one night on stage started singing about hair at the start of the second half, thinking, no, I should be singing about pies. Yes.
But the show, I don't want people to be put off by that. We've rehearsed it actually pretty early. We were in fear of not having a director after Christmas, for example, because of COVID or what have you. So we purposely set the show quite early. We still are nowhere near, right? But the bones are all there. The flesh is on it. Actually, the flesh needs a bit of pampering. Yeah. But we're lucky in as much as we're at a stage now where we can run the whole show. Yeah. And we've still got 5 weeks left, something 4 weeks, something like that. The show's in a good space, and it's such a brilliant show. And just going back to the whole memory thing, I am very lucky, and I want to pay homage now to my my anchor, which is Gemma Vernon, who's playing Mrs. Lovett, and she is amazing. She's got a memory like an elephant. Yes. And she's got a brilliant way of doing Mrs. Lovett, which doesn't which allows me to sort of play to different. She's like an anchor that I can come back to because she's never wrong.
She's a really strong character actress as well, and I think that really helps in this role because Mrs. Lovett, she's a complicated character, isn't she?
She is. I mean, you could argue she's actually more evil than Sweeney Todd because
she manipulates him, doesn't she?
Well, Sweeney Todd's been through a lot. He's been through a journey, and it's almost like when he finds out that something's horrible's happened to his family, it's a snapping point. Yeah, and we've all had that. But Mrs. Lovett, she just buys into this whole thing. For what? I mean, she's got a backstory, sure. She's impoverished, and she can't make pies properly, but because there's no meat, but. Yes. She embraces this whole concept with gusto, and so she's, but she is complicated because obviously she's got a very motherly attitude to the character that you played first time, Tobias, who's played by the brilliant Corey, and she's got love in her heart as well, which must be great for her, because her character is not two-dimensional, not in the slightest.
Yeah, I mean, it's been great to watch Corey over the last sort of 4 or 5 months. I mean, he's only 14, but we've seen him grow into that role over those months. Haven't we?
Yeah, he's a phenomenal lad, isn't he? I mean, he's one of these. Must be really irritating being Corey's mate, because he's just won something for the island in hockey as well.
He's in the under-16s Island hockey team, and they've just head on to the quarterfinals of some national hockey.
But he's been in theatre forever. I mean, we've got a small theatre company, Dreamstar, and we put on pantos, and we audition hundreds of kids, of which maybe 50 will get in every year when we put a panto on. And I think Corey got in just simply because he had good hair. In the first time, Gary went, he has got panto hair, and and it's all natural as well. So he was he was this sort of cute kid with the big bushy hair and everything. Great for panto and everything. And now he's just matured into almost man size, isn't he?
Yes.
And with all this experience, so it's great working with.
He was Gavroche as well, wasn't he?
He was Gavroche. Yeah, exactly. Now imagine having that on your CV and you're not even 16.
It's impressive, isn't it?
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. So how did you get started then? What was it that first got you into theatre?
Yeah, do you know, I'm asked this question a lot, and there's only real one answer, is that I came from a non-theatre family, really, growing up all the way up until 12, and then my cousin moved over from Manchester. All my family's from Manchester, and Christine Wilde moved over, and of course, famous Christine Wilde dance school, and it was in an Onken church hall, and it was a family concern, and everyone in the family was excited. And my mum, who's obviously Christine's auntie, took the money at the door along with her sister, Auntie Peg. And so I used to go down, and it was a Saturday afternoon, I'd be 12 or something, and go and ask your mum for money before you go into town and all this, and I'd be embarrassed, all these girls walking around leotards, and I'd leave pretty quick. And then as the weeks go on, I'd stay a bit longer, I'd chat to people and think, that's actually loads of really, really good-looking girls. It really is as beast. I wish I had a better answer than that, but it hasn't. And then Christine, I think, she had a mission for me, and I don't know why. Maybe it was because I was dancing at weddings. She knew I had rhythm and everything, and she really wanted more boy dancers, because that helps with the school and everything. So she was very clever. She got me, sort of moving furniture backstage in some of the Christine shows, and then that very slowly morphed into moving furniture with a costume on. Do you know? And then
it's got you involved by stealth.
Yeah, it was. And then another thing happened, which I really haven't told people about, but it was. I was in school, and this man walked into the classroom. I thought it was a man anyway, but he was my age. And it was Matt James.
Oh, right.
And he pretty much had a moustache even at 12, 13, And he was interested in theatre. And I don't know how the conversation went, but he said, what's theatres over here? I said, well, I go up to my mum's. He said, why don't we take some tap lessons? And I'd never been validated like that. I suppose I wanted to by that stage. Yeah. But, I grew up in Annika, and this is not what you do, right? You play football or rugby or what have you. So I had a mate then to go to a dance class with. Yeah. I mean, Matt didn't last long, actually, because it is hard, especially 1982. Do you know what I mean? You do get that. It was rough, having the mick taken out of you. But Matt joined with me, and that was a big thing. And then we actually both joined, or Matt joined the Operatic a year before me, but we both went through that little journey together. And I am eternally grateful to Matt James, because without him, I don't think I would have ended up on stage. Weirdly, so that's how it all started.
And you and Matt, you've played opposite each other in lead roles many times over the years.
Yeah, we have. And because obviously we're the same age, but we are quite different. Yeah. Matt's a very, very strong character actor. When going back to Panto, he's my favourite Dame because
he does make a very good Dame.
He does, because he's ugly, right? And he's, and ugly men do make good Dame. Have you ever done Dame yet?
No, I haven't.
You should. Anyway,
I'm not tall enough. I'm not tall enough for Dame.
I'm joking. That's so cruel. But no, Matt's a very good Dame, and he's got certain attributes in theatre where he's very strong, looks very comfortable on stage, and interacts with the audience. So I wouldn't say we've fought for roles too much. Yeah. But we've ended up just by by being the same age and same gender and everything, as doing lots of shows together.
Yeah, because in The Hot Mikado, which was my first show, you were Coco and he was Nanki Poo.
Nanki Poo, yeah.
And then the following year with Chess, you were the Russian and he was the American.
Yes. Yeah. You forget. I forget all the roles, but
you were Valjean and he was Javert the first time round.
Exactly. Yeah, and what a brilliant Javert he was. Because he was so moody and. When he fixes you with his stare, you sort of shrivel, even Jean Valjean sort of thing. But and I got the honour to play that role a bit later on, and all very differently. Just as Sweeney, I hope I'm slightly different to Tony Hawk's with Sweeney. But if I could do half the job that he did, I'll be very happy.
I'm sure you will. And I tried to put a bit of a list together of roles that I think you've played over the years, and the early 90s stuff I wasn't sure of because that was before I kind of really got involved properly myself. But looking through the list, you've played Don Lookwood in Sing in the Rain. You've played both Javert and Valjean in Les Mis, as we've already said. You've played the engineer in Miss Saigon. You played Roger Debris in The Producers. Magaldi in Evita. You've played Zach in The Chorus Line. Danny in Grease. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. It's
I've been very lucky. I mean, I've always said this, that this is... It's not so much talent, it's just being in the right place at the right time. The Isle of Man has got this most amazing theatre. It's one of the best theatres in Britain, and people don't believe that, but it is true, right? If me and you were doing our thing in Burnley, we'd be in the Burnley Mechanics or somewhere, right? Which is, has been converted into a bingo hall and back again, that sort of thing. It's all chipboard, and we've got this amazing theatre. So that's one thing. The other thing is that we've kind of carved out this rights holders niche for ourselves, whereby we're not seen as being sort of predatory to a UK tour. So we can get these rights, which are for Phantom and Les Mis and Miss Saigon. You just don't get to see amateurs playing those things over there. And I always remember, I think it was Bob Marlowe who used to hate the word amateur, because really that's not what we are here. No. But when you put 150 grand into a show, and you've got open island auditions, and you've got full orchestra, and all the lights and scenery come from the UK, director come from the UK, it's not really an amateur. But that's what we are. We're not paid.
Yeah, we're amateur by the fact that we're not paid.
Yeah, but in all other respects, kind of we're not. Do you know what I mean? And actually, I don't know if this is true, but I was told that we've got, per capita, we have got more theatre goers than UK,
right?
In the amateur circle, to a factor of about 25%, something like that, right? So that doesn't happen accidentally. That happens because there's an expectation when you go and see a show over here, it's going to be good. Yeah. And that's an obligation for us, because if you have a bad one, then you've lost potentially lost an audience for 4 or 5 years until they drag them back for whatever reason. But you'll know as well as I do, what mostly happens is someone will come, obviously I work in IT in different places, and I used to work in a factory, and I'll have someone come up to me and say, I was dragged along by the missus, that was amazing, or whatever, and wasn't expecting it to be like that. And then you've got a new audience member who's never been before, and now it's habitual, right? So and same with Panto. Panto took a huge dip in the 80s, and our company and others have managed to drag that up now, so that it's a family tradition to go to the Panto in Douglas and expect to be properly entertained and not be shortchanged.
I mean, and that's a lot of thing. A popular misconception that Panto is easy. I think Panto is easy, but a good Panto is very hard. Yeah, to get that level of energy and maintain that level is a real difficult thing.
I don't know anyone who's called Panto easy. Certain maybe people who've never done it before, because it's very hard. Because you have to please the whole demographic. Yes, you've got your 4-year-old who's petrified of something too scary, and then you've got your very bored father who's been dragged along, probably half inebriated from the night before, who just wants to go asleep. You've got to keep him interested, because he's the ticket buyer for next year. Yes. So and your granddads and the grannies who love a ballad, and all this kind of thing. And that's actually really tough. Really tough. You can be lazy, but you'll never get an audience next year.
No. And I remember you sort of saying a few years back about you had some certain sort of hard and fast rules about being no ballads, or you'd have to have the songs were no more than 2 minutes, because any longer than that, and then people start to switch off, and you have to then drag them back in again. So.
We call it crisp packet death.
Yes.
Where you can hear the crisp packets going, you know you've lost your audience then, right? So I was lucky enough to be hired as sort of a token local for the touring pantos when they weren't that good. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And so I was in some bloody awful pantos in the early 80s and late 80s even. And then, so I saw what was bad, and I lived through the crisp packet deaths. Yeah, you know, and for Dreamstar, it was really just a case of, well, if I got a blank sheet of paper, I probably couldn't do it any worse. Do you know what I mean? But it was a complete blag, and my good friend Gary Chattel and Sonia Callan went on that journey with me, and we're very proud. We produced 7, 8 Gaiety pantos now, and again, because the scripts that you could buy don't mean anything to the Isle of Man. No. I ended up buying 2, I think, for the first show, ripping them up and just writing a new script and it took a year, and again, not easy. It took up my whole life, the whole year writing this script, trying to think of new jokes and stuff like that. But in the end, what the audience got was a local panto that hit right to the heart of what they wanted to see, I think, hopefully. And
because knowing your casting and then the people who you want in those roles, then you can write and tailor the characters to suit them.
And that was another beautiful thing. Well. Yeah, no, you're right. Thank you for picking that up, because I'd cast it early and then write for the actor. Like Dot Tilbury, you can't really write for, right? You just go Dot 2 minutes here. Yeah, but and if you're casting Tony Hawks, don't make things too wordy. That sort of stuff. lots of interaction. But yeah, no, it's we're very lucky and privileged. Like, as I say, going back to the point that. I've got all these fantastic, roles underneath my belt, Phantom and everything like that. But it really is. It's just a case of us on this island having 80,000 people, a really good, strong theatre-going audience, and a brilliant theatre, and the rights to be able to do it, I think. Yeah.
Was there ever a temptation to go professional with it? Because it's something I always say, David Artus is he could always go professional. But...
Oh, well, that's very kind. Two things happened. Well, I became a father really early, so I have got this son, and you have to decide you're a father yourself. Yeah. The most important thing once you have kids is not you anymore; it's your children. So in my early 20s, I was already divorced and pretty in a dark place. But I had this wonderful little boy, and that's when I started to get theatre roles. And again, just when I was hired for Panto as this token local, I was also hired to play as one of the brothers in Joseph. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of my first proper professional gig. And there was loads of people auditioned, including Matt James. He didn't get in, but I did. And that was a shock to me, because these lads walked in, and they were predominantly lads. There was a few girls there as well. And by that stage, I'd just played Don Lockwood in Singing in the Rain. I'd done Crazy for You. I was the new kid on the block. Yeah. I was the name that people talked about. Oh, Dave Artus, he could do that, blah, blah, blah. And the head was going a bit, it was a bit swelly, and then I had to do a video audition to get into this professional gig, and it was a Dick Ray thing, but it was when Dick Ray, basically what he did, he sat down to all the Mount View and Arts Ed review shows and picked the best lads and took them on a tour, right? He got in there first. He was quite clever, right? I didn't know it at the time, but I walked into this rehearsal hall with Steve Serling and Martin Neely and these different people when they were very young, and these lads could sing like Pavarotti, they could dance like Wayne Sleep, they could act like Laurence Olivier, and I went, I'm actually not as good as I thought I was.
I feel way out of my depth.
They were just like, okay, just do a stag leap. I don't know if you know what a stag leap is, but you from a standing start, your legs are up akimbo in the air and you're 7 foot in the air. And, I used to dance. I was with Christian Wild Theatre School, but I stuck to tap because ballet was just a step too far for me in the embarrassment stakes. But I wish I'd have done it, because actually it's the grounding for most musical theatre dance. For all the, everything's got a ballet step behind it somewhere. So I wasn't able to do any of that, and it was a big wake-up call for me, because I thought, maybe I could go away. Before that, obviously, I didn't want to be too long away from my son, but that was like, no, I'm fine here. Yeah. And the other thing is, I was quite close to Tony Hawks then. Tony was playing all these fabulous parts, and he could see that I was hot on his heels, and we had a conversation about this in a dressing room one time, and it's funny how you remember these conversations, isn't it? That you stick to them. He says, Dave, you've got an opportunity here to do whatever roles you want to, really. You'll have to work hard and be good and all that kind of stuff, but we've got this amazing theatre with these amazing societies who put real money behind it, and you can have 2 holidays a year.
Yeah.
And you can raise a family, because obviously, being an actor is a very nomadic lifestyle. So I don't think I've got any regrets at all, because Tony was bang on right. I've got a good job, I've got holidays, I've got no regrets.
Do you know what? Early noughties, I was trying to get myself away to drama school, and I tried for 2 or 3 years and crashed out. Wrong courses, wrong schools, whatever. And I think after a show in the dressing room, I had the exact same conversation with Tony Hawks.
Did you?
Yeah. And yeah, it's the same thing.
It's funny, isn't it? Having said that, me and you were both in a show with Sam Barks.
Yes.
We?
Yeah. And look at her now.
Oh my God. And she went away with a then boyfriend, Alex, didn't she?
Yeah.
And Alex was phenomenally talented, and she kind of made it, and he didn't ish.
Yeah.
I'm guessing he's still absolutely brilliant. But it is kind of, it's luck of the draw, I think, sometimes, isn't it? She got into that show, and I went to see Frozen a few months ago, and I thought, I'd done a few shows with her, and she was lovely. We met backstage, and
She's the same old Sam.
Yeah, she is so gracious and humble.
So all these roles that you've played then over the years, is there any one that you could pick out as your favourite?
It's funny, isn't it? I love Jesus Christ Superstar. It's one of the first early shows I did, and it cemented my sort of love for musical theatre. It was the first time that I'd got emotional on stage. Ernie Thorne being crucified as Jesus, and the power that has to affect an audience was special to me. So that was always a show that I loved. And then I got to play Judas. And I think if I had to pick one role, it would have to be Judas. People have asked me this before, and the shows that I've enjoyed because they're funny. I loved The Producers, for example, and I loved playing Coco and Hot Mikado. Brilliant dance, dead colourful. But yeah, in terms of just a moment in time, playing Judas was my favourite theatre moment, I think.
And that was the John Combledge, and it was an amazingly powerful piece as well.
It was, yeah. Again, it was. I just enjoyed every second of every rehearsal minute and every performance. I love Sweeney. I love Sweeney to death, but it's so stressful. Do you know what I mean? I cannot say it's an enjoyable experience. And we were chatting last night, actually, Neil. And this is true. Is that every time you take on a role and you have to invest in it.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say I'm really a character actor, really, because more method really is that I take on the role, try and forget David Artus. But if you do that, it's at the detriment to your soul. So, because it sounds really deep, doesn't it? But you do. I find myself driving home from Kurt Michael in a right mood. Yeah. Because I'm Sweeney Todd. It takes me that half an hour to sort of lose it.
Decompress.
To decompress and to hardwire your brain, and it sort of soaks in. Even in the intervening months and weeks while you're in a role, and that's true when you're playing something like Hearted as well. So playing Roger Debris in Producers, I remember being happy for a long time during and after that show,
flouncing around.
Yeah, flouncing. Yeah, no, it's a weird hobby, isn't it?
Yeah. Do you think there's a role that has possibly passed you by? Is there one that you either regret a show that you didn't do, or maybe it's a new show that you're possibly now too old to play the part?
Yeah, not really. Like I say, there's an itch I want to scratch, which is Fagin.
Yeah.
But again, I'm not that fussed. It's I've got a family. I've got 4 kids, and 3 kids, and a niece who lives with me, and we've got dogs and horses and mini sheep and all sorts. And life's so busy, and normal times pre-COVID, I'm flying around the world with my job.
Yeah.
So I have to really love a show, and I do think Oliver's been done quite a lot now on the island. So that maybe. I've kind of regretted, and this is awful to say this, I've kind of regretted doing every show twice, even though I've just completely contradicted myself with Jesus Christ Superstar. But, you guys, I sat there when we were doing Les Mis, and I got the honour of playing Javert, which is a fantastic role. But I sat there at the very same year and watched you guys do Spamalot. Green. I was green with envy, because that is like a producer's, it's like Miss Saigon. It's like you guys you could tell that you'd had a 5-month rehearsal period of hilarity.
It was.
And the show was so amazing, and I was like, whoa, screwed up there.
Yeah, we had an absolute ball with that, and it was just a great group of guys, and we each sort of working together. It was greater than the sum of its parts.
Yeah.
If there was a rehearsal when one of the guys was missing, it just didn't feel right if someone else was reading in for it. But when the 5-6 of us together, it was just we just got off
my sides were hurting watching that. And it's of course it's all the difference when you know people, but yeah, it was an amazing show. It was fantastic.
So is there a dream role? Is there a role that you would absolutely kill to play?
Well, I mean, I love Hamilton. That's my sort of favourite musical at the moment. And George Washington is a brilliant, powerful character. I'd love to play that. I still think I could probably dance a little bit. There's that. Trunchbull in Matilda, which is played by a man. Yes. Fantastic role. And I was listening to Alex's podcast, and I think there would be almost like a rugby scrum fight for that role, wouldn't there? You'd be in there, and
I'm sure Dockers would want a piece of that action.
Doc and Matt James, whoever, everyone would want a piece of that action, wouldn't they? Yeah. I don't know. What is it? Come on, let's get the rights for that. What's happening? It's about time.
Yeah. Okay, so stage has been sort of the main output for your talents, but you've also did sort of back in the late 90s, early noughties, when there was quite a big film industry on the island. You were also involved in quite a lot of those as well, weren't you?
Oh God, did you ask this on purpose? Only because I've got horror stories about.
No, not at all.
It's funny, isn't it? Because with theatre, doing professional theatre, I was able to get an equity card.
Yeah.
And an equity card got you quite a long way in film, actually. So these production companies started landing on the island, and I had a good friend of mine, dear friend, John Danks, who was the island's first traffic warden. Yeah. And he was such a brilliant guy, and he was so inventive. He invented himself as a agent.
Yes.
So he was a casting agent for all these films back in the day, and I had an equity card. So I kind of bypassed the whole working as an extra in film to getting one-liners or two-liners. And to my eternal shame, I got 4 or 5 sort of named parts in films, but I lied to get in every single one of them. Every single one. So the first one was the Brill Cream Boys, and I was sat in this office in Mount Murray at the time. And they said, they auditioned me for some part, what have you, and said, oh, that's great, but we've got this really good part. It's a shame that you can't speak German. And I don't know why I said it. I said, I can speak German. And they went, can you? And I was betting that they didn't know enough.
Please don't ask me something in German.
Yeah, I think I did a little bit of German sort of in school and what have you. But and then I was, can you do German? I said, yeah, I can. I said, I don't. I'm so embarrassed saying I don't think I've ever told him this. I said, I've got a relative who's in the army in Germany, and he taught me German. I was like, what the hell am I talking in my head? But it was, in this world, and you'll know, Neil, that flanneling and beefing yourself up for roles is almost acceptable. It's almost like a white lie. So I got this role, and it was only a few lines, and then thank God I have this really good friend who's the farmer next door to my wife's farm, Anna Crowcamp, and she taught me the lines in German, but not only in German, in a Bremen accent.
Right.
And just as, to my eternal shame, I've lied to get in every role. Every role I've done has kind of ended in disaster as well. Yeah. It's not like theatre. It's a very different discipline. So in that particular instance, I knew these lines back to front, and I had to say, I could say it now, Entschuldigen Sie bitte, es tut mir leid, to Bill Campbell from The Rocketeer, and there's Gene Butler from Riverdance, and there was, who was the really famous guy in it? can't remember now. Anyway, from my left foot, in this smoky room, all these extras, and it was in the day when filming was really expensive. Actually, there's 3 big, massive cameras pointing at you.
Still on film as well.
Yeah, film. You have to cut, check the gate, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah,
and the big thing that threw me was you walk into shot, right, and they throw a beanbag down, and you've got to hit that spot because that's where the camera's already positioned.
Yeah.
And that's not theatre.
Yeah.
In theatre, you just walk around the stage and you prance around. So the director was already getting really knocked off with me for not hitting the spot. I was a couple of inches away or what have you. And then because I'd started getting nervous, I'm not normally nervous in theatre, but this is a very alien.
Yeah.
I got the bloody lines wrong, didn't I? But because everyone else's lines were far more important than mine, that was just in the film.
Yeah.
And then, watched the film later on, sure enough, dubbed over. And I was like, oh. So
I did not realise that. I've seen the Pilgrim voice several times, but I've never realised you were dubbed.
Yeah, dubbed. For one of the lines anyway. So, and then, lots of things. So there was, I got in a film called Stiff Upper Lips, and shame you're not a hurdler. I'm a hurdler. Are you a hurdler? Yep. Yeah, I'm a hurdler. So had to go and learn to hurdle. Yeah. And a lad called Kevin Furlow, who was a hurdling for the island, taught me to hurdle. And then, lo and behold, because the audition period was like months before, they set me against a real hurdler who was Kevin Furlong, and we had to run round the courtyard of King William's College, and that was fine until they put champagne glasses on every hurdle because that was in the script. Right. It was part of the inauguration. I was playing Roger Bannister in this particular film, and I had a couple of lines with Samuel West, who's very famous, and I proceeded to knock down every hurdle on the way. So,
How many glasses did you smash?
Oh, don't know. 20, 30 glasses of champagne. Again, I've managed to really irritate every film director I've ever worked with.
So stick to theatre, and that's the moral of that story. Yeah.
Oh, the worst one. I'll tell you the worst one. Sorry, I played a cop, a policeman in Everybody Loves Sunshine, which is called Busted in America. Anyway, David Bowie was in that, but my scene wasn't with David Bowie, and this wasn't my fault this time, thankfully. But I was with this rap artist, to be unnamed at this stage, but I'm convinced he wasn't in the right state, drink or something else maybe. And we had to film, and we filmed in Liverpool or here. It was dually filmed in both Liverpool and here, and so I'd meticulously learned my lines, as you do, trained actor, equity card holder, and I had one job, which is to talk to this guy down when he's holding a gun to me, and I had a policeman's helmet on, and in this policeman's helmet was a very expensive explosive device called a squib.
Right. It's
a one-time use device because it blows the helmet to pieces, and it's supposed to, brains and all this kind of thing. I'm supposed to say, please put the gun down, sir. Your life isn't worth it. Let's see if we can turn this around, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I roll into shots. Everyone's talked to by the director. This is a one-time take. Do not screw it up. We're going to film it no matter what happens anyway. Yeah. So the pressure's on you. I was like, oh, God. Anyway, so this guy that was playing opposite starts rambling, nothing to do with the script, all on film. The director's everyone's looking at each other. Now, this explosive device in my helmet is attached to a lead because it's not remote control in those days, obviously. And there's a guy at my ankle, the guy with headphones on, holding a button, and he's got a cue line, which is, "I don't care." That was the line he had to say, and bump, and then the helmet explodes. And this guy's. I didn't know when to put my line in, so I was looking down, and in the end, just went, "I don't care." The guy went, "Oh, I'm going to blow the helmet." The helmet blew. Now, when you get your head blown off, you are supposed to fall down, but it did shock me. So I stood there for a couple of seconds, then remembered I had to fall down and fell down. They managed to edit. I saw the film much later on, managed to edit it, and the scene looked okay, apart from my appalling acting, because I didn't know what was going on. Yeah. I literally had no idea what was going on. So, again, I'll just stick to theatre.
Brilliant.
This is called the Theatre Podcast, isn't it? It's not the film podcast, is it? You can cut all that, Neil.
You're listening to the Manx Theatre Podcast with Neil Callin.
So, like I said, you've got quite an impressive list of shows that you've done over the years. I'm sure there are shows there with varying budgets. So there are costumes that will have been fantastic and costumes that may not have been quite so good. So what would you say would be the best and the worst costume that you've had to wear over the years?
Best and worst costume. I suppose I could put one costume in both those categories. So that was when I played Phantom.
Yeah.
And it wasn't so much the costume; it was the prosthetics.
Yeah.
So it was a 3-hour ordeal to get this fake skull and half face on, and that was really, really uncomfortable by the end of the show.
Yeah.
And in fact, what people don't realise is when you watch shows with people with prosthetics is you're still sweating.
Yes.
But the sweat it forms a barrier between you and this prosthetic. And it's not as if it stops you sweating, right? So there's rivers of sweat falling down from little parts of this skull cap that you've got on. It's absolutely gross.
Yeah.
But it was also the effect. Was amazing. Was amazing. I suppose if I had one nightmare costume, and it's only from a very personal point of view, it was in Joseph. The producers, directors, most of the cast were gay, and most of them are all my really good friends even to this day. They're all sort of West End now. These guys that could do stag leaps and everything were turned out to be actually really, really good and ended up in West End shows.
Yeah.
But it was done very camp. This was the campest Joseph ever done, and I know that it's always been done camp, but this was uber camp. and Dick Ray, being Dick Ray, decided to put a number in that Andrew Lloyd Webber actually hated and took out the show.
Right.
It's called "You're Not Wanted Back at Home."
Right.
And it's a big tap number.
Right.
And so Dick said, "Oh, we're going to put this in." Actually, someone found out and complained, and we had to completely rework the show halfway through the run because Andrew Lloyd Webber found out. He was in deep doo-doo. So, but opening night, I had to go out, and all I was wearing was a tiny pair of white shorts, socks that went up to my knee, and a little tiny white waistcoat, top hat, and tap shoes. And we were all dressed like that. It was a kick line, right? Yeah. But it was the most campus thing I've ever worn in all my life. And
this is coming from a man who's played Roger Debris.
Yeah, because that was drag.
Yeah.
And then and my dad, who was sadly passed away years ago, but he was still alive, and he was on the front row. And he'd never really got this theatre thing, He was dead proud of me, of course he was.
Yeah.
But it was, I think that was a step too far for him back at a different time, right? So, looking at, I could see his face, and it was just like, oh God, what are the lads in work? Because we all worked together at Ron's Aircraft Company, including my dad. I could just see him going, "What are you wearing, son?" So that was horrible.
So over the years, then I think we sort of touched on this slightly before, but you've worked with some brilliant leading ladies. You've had Sarah Holland, there's been Lisa Dancock, you've now got Gemma, you've had Emily Coates. There's been some amazing women to work alongside there. So with that in mind, this is our gender swap question.
Oh,
if you could play a role of the opposite gender, which one would it be?
Yeah, easiest question I think you've got to ask me, because Mrs. Lovett, hands down.
Yeah,
I love Sarah Holland doing it. She was absolutely hilarious, and Gemma's going to be phenomenal.
Yes.
But yeah, that this really shouldn't be called Sweeney Todd. It should be called Mrs. Lovett. Because actually a lot of the plot revolves around her. She's on stage just as much as me. She's got some amazing songs, and she's a proper character. But yeah, so that easy peasy, Mrs. Lovett, hands down.
Yeah, I mean there are a few shows like that where actually the best character isn't the named character, like Jesus Christ Superstar.
Yeah,
Judas is the part that you want to play. Judas is the best.
Well,
part
it follows him, doesn't it? It's his story, really. Yeah.
And then get the Rocky Horror Show. Well, it's not about Rocky Horror. It's Dr. Frankenfurter.
Yeah.
There are a few like that along the way as well.
Yeah, I remember you in Rocky Horror, mate. You were a buff, proper buff.
If only I'd had George Wilde. If only hadn't been 4 at the time, it would.
Did a good job without George Wilde, mate. You'd be all right.
It would be great. Right, okay. So it's a little something that I've introduced in the last couple of episodes. This is a little bit of a quiz about the show, just to see how well you know it.
Oh, God.
Right, okay, so I've got 10 questions, and I recorded an episode with Alex Maxwell and Hannah on Monday night, but that's going to come out after this one, and I've asked them the same questions, and let's see how you do in comparison to them.
You've done this on purpose.
Maybe. Right, so I'll start off with an easy one.
Mm-hmm.
Who wrote the music and lyrics for Sweeney Todd?
Okay, thank you for the easy one. Stephen Sondheim.
Correct. What year was the original Broadway production?
78?
79.
Oh!
And then it went to London the following year in 1980.
Right.
In the original London cast, who played Sweeney and Mrs. Lovett?
Oh,
Now, you've watched the documentary.
I have.
You recommended it to me.
Don't know.
Dennis Quilley
Dennis Quilley.
and Sheila Hancock.
Sheila Hancock. Dennis Quilley. Yes, he's amazing.
Yeah, it was Len Carew and Angela Lansbury on Broadway.
Len Carews. Yeah, that's what I was thinking about. Frank. Okay, yeah.
Okay, should be a fairly easy one, this one. In the movie version, who played Judge Turpin and Beadle Bamford?
So Judge Turpin was Alan Rickman.
Yep.
Beadle Bamford was him from Our Feed the Same Pet.
Yeah.
Can't remember though his name.
Timothy Spall.
Timothy Spall. Yes.
Okay. It's probably something you either know or you don't, but it's a stick your finger in the air kind of a number.
All right.
How many Tony Awards did the original Broadway production win?
Oh, I know this. It's 14.
Close. It was 8.
Yeah, see, I did one of those things then.
Confidence. Yes, going wrong with confidence. Yeah, it was nominated for 9 and it won 8.
Really?
It won Best Musical, Best Book of a Musical, Best Original Score, Best Leading Actor in a Musical, Best Actress in a Musical, Best Direction of a Musical for Hal Prince,
Right.
Best Scenic Design and Best Costume Design. The only one it missed out was Lighting.
Wow. Do you know what? They almost want you to go out and buy a ticket, doesn't it?
It does indeed.
Yeah.
So, right, question 6. What is the opening number of Act 2?
God, that's good.
Yeah. Or more hot pies. I'd accepted both.
Right.
I'm not entirely
So
sure.
it was a
myself.
trick question
Yeah.
because, I have been doing this for 4 months.
Do you know the songs that you're singing? Yeah. Okay. Now this is a best guess because I'm not entirely sure of the number. But how many people are killed by Sweeney throughout the run of the show?
Oh God, I really should know that, shouldn't I?
Without naming names and giving spoilers.
Actually, I don't think it's as many as you think. It's 5.
It's 8.
Is it?
Yeah.
Is it?
Mm.
Okay. Right. Very good.
I would go into the name, but we don't want to give any spoilers.
Yeah.
Right. So, in the Manx Operatic Society 2004 production, who played Mrs. Lovett?
The lovely Sarah Nichols, Sarah Holland. Sarah Nichols at the time.
Yes, she was just Sarah Nichols. Yeah, she got married that year, so yeah, she would have been Sarah Holland later that year. Yeah. Okay, number 9, and I'm not too sure this is mentioned in the show anywhere at all. But in what year is Sweeney Todd set?
1851.
No, it's set in 1785.
Is it really?
Yeah, I mean the original book that the original play that the musical is based on was set in 1785.
Wow.
So,
Oh.
the last question then.
I would check that if I were you, Neil. Only because we had a conversation about guns yesterday. There's
Yeah.
a gun in the show, and we've been sent to 2 guns, and one's looks too old from the 17th century,
Yeah.
and one's from the 18th century. So, yeah, I don't know.
I
yeah.
mean, John might have set his version later,
Okay, yeah. Okay.
but from the
All
original
right.
book, it's 1785.
We'll agree to disagree.
Yeah.
Yeah, fine.
So the story of Sweeney Todd first appeared as a series of Victorian penny dreadfuls published in a magazine over 1846 and 1847. So that's probably where you're right with that kind of 18 period. It was called Sweeney Todd and the String of what?
Oh, the string of onions, yeah.
Close. Pearls. So you didn't do too badly there, actually. You got more than Alex and Hannah managed anyway. So
Did I?
1, 2,
Well.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You got 7.
Very
7 out of 10.
intelligent, Neil.
Excellent. That's good. That's a gold star. 7 out of 10. Well done. Right. Okay. So the next final thing really is our Spotify playlist. So back in July 2020, we started our playlist.
Mm-hmm.
And Neil, King and we set it up. We chose 10 songs each. And these are songs that either we've performed in a show, they're songs that we really like, or the songs that mean something to us. So we started off with 20 because it was a decent place to start with a playlist, because no one wants a playlist with 2 songs in it.
Yeah.
And then every guest that we've had on the podcast since then has added another song onto the playlist. Some of the additions we've had were Tony Eccles chose When I Grow Up from Matilda. Nikki Openshaw chose You'll Be Found from Dear Evan Hansen. Alex Armstrong chose Children Will Listen from Into the Woods. And Jeff Pugh chose You'll Be Back from Hamilton. So, David Artus, which song would you like to add to the Spotify playlist and why?
It's a great question, and I am asked this a few times and I've always got the same answer, so I am going to make it different. Normally I would pick Gethsemane from Jesus Christ Superstar, the Steve Balsamo version, or the Matt Creer version, who's also brilliant. But actually, I think going back to just one of my favourite ever roles, which was the engineer in Miss Saigon, I am going to go for American Dream.
Brilliant. That's a fantastic song. It's certainly one of my favourites from that show anyway.
Yeah, shouldn't be legal, should we, having a hobby where you're surrounded by bikini ladies the whole day.
Must have been awful for you. Awful. Hated every minute. So, what's next, David? What's coming up after Sweeney Todd? What's next on the cards for you?
Well, acting wise, not much. I like to pick and choose, I guess. So back into retirement again, but. I know you interviewed Alex Toohey a few weeks ago, so we are putting on Full Monty again. It's Alex's company. I'm directing. So yeah, that's the next thing. It's in July 2023. So we're just in the middle of getting the cast together, which is largely the same as it was before, with a few additions and changes. And yes, that's the next thing. It was really, really exciting. That was a brilliant show. It's been a good few years since it's been done, and the audience loved it. And again, it's one of those things where you if you feel like you're giving something to an audience, that's such a gratifying feeling when seeing them stand up and whoop and cheer. And in this one, actually, it's interesting because we do two evening performances. We do an early evening and a late evening. And we had to have female bouncers last time because the girls like to be girls and have a few drinks and
get a bit raucous.
And yes, great. It's great fun.
Brilliant. So, David, thank you very much. I wish you all the very, very best with Sweeney Todd, and no doubt we'll get you back again with Alex next year to talk about Full Monty close to the time.
Fantastic. And thank you, Neil, for having me on, and good luck with you for Sweeney Todd.
Thank you very much.
Horrible Beadle Bamford.
Lovely. Great. Thank you very much.
Bye now.
You're listening to the Manx Theatre podcast.
And with that, we bring episode 30 to a close. Thanks once again for David for joining me on the podcast, and we wish him all the very best for Sweeney Todd, which is running at the Gaiety Theatre from the 5th to the 12th of March. If you haven't done so already, make sure to get your tickets now from villagaiety.com, the Welcome Centre, or by calling 600 555. Remember to like and follow our social media pages to get notifications of upcoming episodes and events. Don't forget to check out our Spotify playlist by searching for Manx Theatre Podcast under playlists. If you have any events that you'd like us to talk about or promote on a future episode, you can contact us through our social media accounts or by email to manxtheatrepodcast@gmail.com. All that remains is to say thanks for listening, and I hope you join me again next time on the Manx Theatre Podcast. I've been Neil Callin. Goodbye.
The Manx Theatre podcast, taking a look behind the scenes of Manx Theatre.
Than actors alive for me.